Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, May 8th. I'm Julie Robenheimer.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Kevin Allen.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I'm Eklund, and I've got to remember to put the camera on Julie when the show starts now. How you doing? This is HockeyBuzz.com, the HockeybuzzCast, and today's special edition, since, the playoffs are slowing down a little bit, we're going to do a little bit more discussing and figuring out what's going on as far as, speculating and fun stuff like that, because what else is the internet for? So it's not speculating and craziness. Let's talk about coaching for a little bit today, because we have quite a few spots open. And let's start with you, Kevin. Let's hear some of your thoughts. We're hearing Carolina and Kevin Dineen, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. I think Barry Trotz is the key to all this. I think, first we've got to decide where Barry's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously the most important coach in the marketplace. I still think he's a perfect fit for Washington. They've been crying for a defensive coach, or at least improvement on the defense for a long time now, and I think he could really clean up the problems in Washington. And I also think he would get along well with Alex Ovechkin. I think that could be a good fit there. He's always been a player's coach. He's a good communicator. Guys like playing for him. They generally have a pretty good time, and I think he's a good fit there, and we'll have to see. Now, there's some good AHL coaches that you have to look at as well. Willie Desjardins, who's in Texas, and then, of course, we have Jeff Blashill, who's in Grand Rapids. He's the Red Wings top minor league coach, but he's got a year left on his contract, and I hear he's actually going to stay there. And John Hines, I really like him. He's in the Pittsburgh Penguins chain as well. He's done a good job of supplying the Penguins with players to help them this season when they've had a lot of injuries. So, and Kirk Muller, I wouldn't rule him out. His only problem, obviously, is that he's had 3 years and he didn't get the team in the playoff. But he's pretty well respected, and it's going to be interesting to see if anybody will take a chance on him.
So what is the thought process here? I mean, we've heard Kirk Muller as an assistant coach. Josh, you were talking about this earlier. Assistant coaches versus head coaches. It seems like some guys, Adam Oates. This is been my thing with that. Was always my thing with Adam Oates. Is he just an assistant coach or is he a head coach? Josh.
Well, Adam Oates and Kirk Muller both were pretty damn good assistant coaches. If you remember the Canadians a couple of years ago when Kirk Muller was an assistant coach, all the players loved him, and you know what? That team was pretty damn good. And then you look at Adam Oates in New Jersey as well. When he left the Devils, a lot of players vocally spoke to me and said that they were upset that he was leaving, but they understand, but they're going to miss him because he was a big part of the New Jersey Devils bench. So yeah, I mean, both guys I think are very good assistant coaches. It's still a little too early to figure out if they're good head coaches because their first go at it didn't go as well.
What do you guys think? Let's go kind of around a little bit. What do you think of the extension now to Ken Hitchcock yesterday, 1-year extension? Well, then we'll get into some of the vacancies too. This is Josh. You were saying earlier what I had heard as well, which is this has been pretty much known for a while. Just sort of got out yesterday. But Mike, are you in favor of this? Do you think Hitch works in this situation?
Well, I mean, you can't deny his pedigree as a head coach, but you also have to realize that after a while he starts to get on the nerves of the players, and maybe the players start to tune him out after a while. I mean, his type of coaching, that's just natural. I mean, with any coach that's more authoritarian like. I think that the tune-out factor is always there. He's only been in St. Louis for 3 years, so he might be getting to the point where they're going to go a year at a time with him and see how things go. I mean, I don't place the blame for the Blues' loss to Chicago on Ken Hitchcock. I mean, they were unbelievably injured going into the playoffs, lose Backus because of that high hit from Seabrook in Game 2, and they didn't get goaltending from Ryan Miller that I think that they thought they were going to get when they made the trade. So I think they've according to what Josh just said, they let go. I think it was Greg Agnew, their assistant coach, who was somebody who was integral to Hitchcock, very close to him, and they may bring in an associate coach like a Kirk Muller or like an Adam Oates, for example, somebody who might be in position to take over from Hitchcock if things don't work out. But I can't see getting rid of him right now, and I think that the changes in St. Louis are going to be more roster-related than coaching-related right now.
It seems crazy to get rid of Hitch right now to me. Like, I mean, it seems beyond. I mean, Julie, your thoughts on that?
I would agree. I think that there's two ways to look at this. You know, like Hitchcock is incredibly effective right off the bat, and then the problem is you know, there's the one hump of getting the players to buy into, you know, what he's selling, which he usually does through a really strong captain to lead the way and you know, forge that path for him.
Right.
But then, you know, a couple years down the road, when you don't find the success that, you know, that coach, I don't want to say that he's promising, but he's saying, hey, follow me, listen to me, I will get you to the promised land. And the players are like, oh, yeah, gung-ho, let's do it, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 years later, they just are still falling short of their goal. And that is where I think you find players tuning out. You know, it's always like, you know, with any situation, when you have someone saying, you know, follow me, and you're like, all right, let's do it. And then you just don't get there, and you just fall short. And that is going to be his struggle now, because each year he's going to have to get the players to buy in again and believe him again. And, you know, it's hard when you're in this situation, in the moment, you know, with all of the injuries that they had, for them to realize that, you know, it was the injuries. It was the holes in the lineup that unfortunately could not be filled because of, you know, this injury or that injury or whatever. So that is going to be the challenge for Ken Hitchcock. He needs to win. It's essentially what needs to happen. So I find it interesting that there's a one-year contract, but at the same time, there are a plethora of coaches at lower levels, I know particularly in college, that work on one-year contracts. And it forces them to be, you know, incredibly driven and motivated and, you know, strive for that level of success. So, you know, it puts a lot of pressure on Hitchcock, but as they say, you know, pressure will either break you or... So I'm hoping for his sake. I love Ken Hitchcock from his days in Philadelphia and how nice he was to me when I was Miss New Jersey, actually. So I would love to see him find a lot of success in St. Louis. And it's unfortunate how their season ended this year.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to argue that when they were healthy. I mean, Hitch has taken that team from a good team to the best team in the NHL this past year.
And as exciting as that Chicago-St. Louis series was, think that having two healthy teams and the best versions of both teams would have absolutely blown our minds.
Yep. All right, we got some breaking news. Josh at the Hockey News breaking news, Hockey Buzz, Hockey Buzz, not the Hockey News, breaking news desk in Toronto. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I guess you could call it breaking news, but we kind of knew it was going to happen. All this talk about what was going to happen in Toronto with Randy Carlyle, I had heard some rumblings that, you know, things were going to be fine and he was going to be back, and maybe they were even talking extension, possibly. Darren Dreger actually noting that the Leafs are meeting right now and continuing to meet in Las Vegas. He says the fact that Carlyle hasn't been fired to this point indicates he will be back for another season on the Leafs bench. I'm not surprised, guys, at all.
No, I mean, I don't know. Kevin, your thoughts on Carlyle? I mean, he's been a pretty unpopular player among his players, unpopular coach among some of his players, from what I've heard.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I am a little bit surprised. You know, although I do agree that the longer that it's gone, the less likely it was that he was going to be fired. But I agree with you. I mean, to me, the way that the power play, the penalty killing, and the team defense struggled, that's always an indication that you know, something is needed there. Usually, that's a teaching situation for a coach. So I'm a little bit surprised at that. I thought it's the easiest thing in the world to change the coach, but you know, you've also looked at that team and said, no matter who the coach is, they may not play strong defense.
Yeah, like you've said, they really have defensive holes. I mean, they've got big holes on their team. I mean, so yeah, I mean, Mike, your thoughts? I mean, obviously you've been pro Carlisle for a while.
I've been pro Carlisle and have thought that he was going to stay because I'm of the belief, watching this team, that the problem is not coaching. He's been on the job for 24 months, essentially with the exception of the additions of guys like Boland and the signings of Clarkson. This is still the core that Ron Wilson had a couple years ago, and the core that lost 13, 14 games in the month of February 2 years ago that got Wilson fired. I think this is a roster problem more than anything. And, honestly, you have a group that had problems with Wilson, and essentially, Wilson was there for 4 years, and he was fired. He had his chance. He didn't get them to go. Carlisle got them in the playoffs. It was a lockout-shortened season, but in that small window last year, their penalty killing was great. Their defensive game was much better, and they should have beaten Boston in Game 7, but collapsed in the last 11 minutes. This year, a lot of the old problems came back. Their penalty killing was terrible. He overplayed players like Kessel and Van Riemsdyk and Bozek down the stretch because none of his second, third, and fourth line guys were playing consistently. So I think this is a roster problem. If Drager's report is true, I think it's much better that Carlisle comes back than they go out and hire a coach who probably wasn't a great fit. I think there will be casualties on his coaching staff, namely Scott Gordon, the former Islanders coach, and Greg Cronin, another assistant coach, who were carryovers from the Wilson administration. I wouldn't be surprised if Shanahan and Dave Nonis bring in somebody who, if Carlisle doesn't work out next season during the year, can take over as head coach. So he's not out of the woods,
right?
But I think he's going to be given an opportunity, and I think there are going to be extensive roster changes to implement this culture change that Tim Lewicki and Brendan Shanahan and Dave Nonis talked about after the season.
Josh, back to you before moving to. I want to talk about the Florida situation a little bit. Josh, go ahead.
Yes, I've now heard from a fourth source, that Peter Laviolette apparently did sign a 5-year deal for $2.5 million per year. I don't know if you guys have heard that at all, but I keep hearing that from different sources here that apparently that's what he got in Nashville.
Seems like a lot for Nashville to pay to a coach who wasn't employed. I don't know. I have not heard that. I looked into it earlier today when you had texted to me, and no one responded to me. But yeah, that's a lot of money. I mean, and Peter Laviolette brings a lot to the table, but and with he's probably going to make all that money because Nashville doesn't fire coaches all that often. So that's a good thing for Peter if it's true. It's a lot of money to make. That's
I'll take it.
Gosh, what is that? 2.5. Do your math real quick. That's 1.25.
$12.5 million for
$5 million. Yeah. It's interesting. They just had did you see this thing the other day? It's a Tom Pody, right? Who's a friend, I think, Julie, right? You know Thomas. Is it Thomas Pody that you know? You familiar with? You went to school with him, perhaps, or something like that?
No.
I'm sorry. Forget that. That was Thomas Polk. I'm sorry. I always get those guys confused.
Thomas Polk.
That was Thomas Polk. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway, the guy made $28 million over his career. That's just one of these things that's just impressive. Kevin, on Florida, let's talk about Florida because you talked yesterday, which I really thought was right, about how we see this swing back and forth. If you're going to do this, if this doesn't work, go completely the opposite. And we've seen it with coaching a lot, right, where we go from what I call the player-friendly coach to the harsh coach, right, back and forth and back and forth. Florida, I mean, they sort of had a little bit of both. I mean, they left Kevin Dineen, they went to the interim coach now. Where do you see them? Are they looking for a player-friendly coach or a tough coach or?
I don't think they know. I talked to Dale Talon this morning, as a matter of fact, and we talked a lot about the draft philosophy and where they think they're at. He's not going to get caught up, he said, in the idea of whether he needs a defenseman or a forward, although at one point he said to me that he felt that he had a lot of good young defensemen, and I know everybody is saying that he's going to look at the defenseman that's up near the draft, Eklund, but I don't know. I think he's probably going to lean toward a player-friendly coach, but I think he's really kind of open-minded. That's the impression I had. He told me he was going to interview a lot of people,
Okay.
and he hoped to have it by June 15. And I think, he said he was going to take the best player at the top of the draft, and I think he might take the guy who has the best interview. That's what it seemed like.
It seems like another spot that Barry Trotz would make sense into me. Like as much as you look at, I don't know that he wants to go to would he want to go to a big market, Trotz? I mean, Florida and Washington, sort of along those lines, Kev.
I bet Washington really isn't a big market. Like his mission there would be very similar to what his mission in Nashville would be. I mean, he's still going to have to sell the game.
Yeah.
You have to do that in Washington, and the media group there isn't very large. It's not like he's going to have 75 people, covering the team every day. It'll be a very small group. He'll deal with 2 or 3 people. It really, Florida and Washington are going to be very similar in what his day-to-day operation would be. It would probably, in Florida, he'll have more pressure, I think, to help sell the game because they don't sell as many tickets as Washington. But it's really 2 distinct situations. If he's going to Florida, he's going to teach and work with young players. He's got to get that group of Huberdeau and Barkov. He's got to get them better. And if he goes to Washington, the mandate will be, hey, do what you did in Nashville because we need better defense in Washington. So it really will come down, in my mind, what he prefers because I think he'll have multiple options. I think he can pretty much have any job he wants. I mean, why wouldn't they take him?
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely the guy right now that people are waiting on, I would think, and I'm sure every team out there that as a coach is looking at him. I mean, including some teams that maybe don't have GMs yet, like Vancouver. And isn't he from Ontario originally? Isn't he from the Toronto area, Kev?
I know he's from Canada, but he has.
Trotz, yeah.
No, he's from Western Canada.
Is he Western Canada?
I was going to say, I know he has his summer home is out in BC. I think it's out Kelowna area. So, he's got some roots out there. I don't know. I mean, like, I think of those 3 jobs we're mentioning now, Vancouver, Florida, and Washington, I would think, even though, he's from out in that area, I would think that's the least enjoyable situation, Vancouver, because he's going to inherit problems there. And that's not an easy fix. I think it's an easier fix in Washington and Florida than in Vancouver.
Yeah, perhaps it's tough to say. It could be an easier fix, or it could be a real big disaster out there too. That seems to be a team that's right on the edge. That's I don't know. I mean, and then the other teams, of course. What have you heard about other coaches? Josh, go to you.
Well, in Vancouver, in regards to the general manager position, I've been told that they've interviewed Jim Benning a couple of times already, and maybe that's the guy that ends up going to Vancouver. Obviously, he has a little bit of a connection with Trevor Linden. Benning might be the guy in Vancouver, guys.
And Benning was in the mix for the Buffalo job. He used to be a scout in the Buffalo organization and did play with Trevor Linden in Vancouver after being a high Toronto draft pick in the early 80s. So that sort of would add up, and we'll see. I don't think they're going to be hiring a coach until the GM is in place. I think they've maybe learned their lesson from. Oh, wait a second. I don't want to get sued by the Vancouver ownership. I shouldn't say anything.
Well, we got your back, Mike. Don't worry about that. You're good. Yeah. So, we're going to be following this for sure, and we'll get to a UFA to be at the end of the show. But let's talk a little bit about last night's game as little as possible because it really didn't have a whole lot of interest in my mind. I really tried to watch this one. But my gosh, Julie, what were your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that the New York Rangers are incredibly tired, and I actually have 2 thoughts.
Not just physically tired either, but just tired.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
All right.
But 2 things. I have decided that I don't know that I can watch any more Pittsburgh Penguins games for the rest of the playoffs, simply because in every game, Pierre Maguire tells me that Jussi Jokinen is from Oulu, Finland, and owns a team up there close to the Arctic Circle, and all summer long it's daylight. If I have to hear that one more time, I might just scream. So
He's going to be our UFA to be soon, Julie. So we'll talk about him in an entire.
We can talk about him.
I'm just kidding.
I just can't watch any more NBC broadcasts.
I think Yoni Pickinen was from there.
And in fact, I thought I was safe. I was watching NHL Live yesterday, and he brought it up again in NHL Live. So I was like...
Wait a second, Julie. Did you know that Sidney Crosby went to Shattuck St. Mary's?
Oh, my gosh. I had no idea. That's incredible. So, I mean, honestly, every game he tells us the same stinking story about Oulu, Finland, and he spells it for us, and, like, I cannot, for that reason, I almost wish the Penguins would not continue on in the playoffs, because I just don't want to hear it anymore. So, there's that.
I love it. That's awesome.
But in regards to the game itself, they're just tired, you know. And the other thing too that I've been hearing a lot in these playoffs is, oh, if he was healthy, he wouldn't have made that mistake. If he was healthy, he would have been able to catch that player. If he was healthy, he would have made that shot. So if you're playing a drinking game at home and you want to get absolutely wasted, use "if he was healthy" as your key word, because I guarantee you will be drinking a lot. Because, and I sit there and I say, are we now making the, oh, he's not healthy as an excuse for poor play? Because that's what I feel like. You know, it's just that time of year where everybody plays, even if they're decapitated, and we're just supposed to be okay with that. And I think if you are not healthy and would have been able to make that play had you been healthy, maybe from a coaching standpoint you need to think about whether this person actually deserves to be in the lineup, or if you would be better served having somebody else come in and replace him. So that is my challenge in this postseason, particularly with the Rangers, simply because they're not healthy. They're freaking tired. They have played an absurd number of games. And I had a conversation with someone on Twitter, and they're like, well, blah, blah, blah. I was like, hey, look, they had an opportunity to have a day off. They could have won against the Flyers in 6 games, but instead they didn't. And they let the Flyers come in and, you know, put their foot down and force a Game 7, and now you have to play another game. So, you know, the schedule is what it is. You really can't blame the schedule. You just have to make sure that you take care of your body when you have the opportunity to do so. And the Rangers clearly have not been able to do that.
Well, I'm with you 100%, and I'm looking up.
End of rant.
I'm looking up. Fine. Here's, by the way, if you're looking on here, this is where Oulu, Finland is, right here, Jules.
Oulu,
All
Finland.
right, so that's where it is. A little bit about Oulu, Finland, for a second. It is the it's not 193,000 people.
And one of them is UC Jokinen.
They're called inhabitants because if you live up there, you are inhabiting that area. No question about it. 193,000 inhabitants. Yeah, it's a region of northern Ostrobothnia. It's the world's most populous city in northern Finland and the 5th most in the country, and it's known for its tango bars. So
hey, the tango bars in Finland are like the place to go.
I know, and especially in Oulu. Kevin, you ever been to Oulu?
Because there's not much to do in Oulu.
I have not not been there.
Oh, man.
But, Kevin, don't you want to go? After all the talk Pierre McGuire has done, you know what? I bet you he is being paid by, like, the tourism board of Oulu, Finland.
Of course. I'd like to go, too. I mean, you know, it looks like a fine place to be. So that was our thoughts on the game last night.
Well, let me just say, I think I would get less inebriated playing Julie's drinking game if I took a shot for every shot that the Rangers took last night, because they only.
Oh yeah, that was pathetic. What did they have? 4 in the 3rd period, and you're down by a goal and then 2. Yeah. That's baloney.
I mean, I will grant that Ryan McDonough is not the Ryan McDonough that was playing during the season, playing very well in the Olympics. I don't think he has a point now in 11 postseason games. He did look pretty slow on that play where Malkin basically went around him, but that's not an excuse. If you strap the skates on and you're on the ice, and you're expected to perform. But the problem is, I mean, the Rangers are getting no offense from their power play. I don't know what it is now. I think it's probably 0 for 38. Rick Nash to the point is not showing up to the point that he's getting booed by the MSG crowd in the third period. I mean, very lustily booed, and to the point that I don't know that organization, they have a real quandary going into the off season because they have one compliance buyout left, and everybody assumes it's going to be Brad Richards. But if you base it on the way the playoffs have gone, I mean, is it Brad Richards or is it Rick Nash? Because I mean, he's a great player, and don't get me wrong, I think both of them have something to contribute. But those contracts, Nash making $7.8 million for another 3 seasons, or Richards making close to $7 million for another 6, one of them, you have to use that compliance buyout to sort of take that albatross type contract off of the books.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Oulu is a state of mind, Julie. That's the motto. Just wanted to let you know
I
the
love
motto of Oulu. It's a state of mind. So you go to ouluinspires.fi. You can find out more about.
You know what else? Just getting back to Mike's point about that power play. Did you see that stat about how past couple years, whenever there's been a team with a crazy long playoff drought, they've gone on to win the cup?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's true.
That's crazy pants.
Can I share some cool statistics with you guys really quickly?
No.
Okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Rick Nash, shooting percentage in his career, 12.4%. As a New York Ranger, 10.8%. 2013-14, 10.1%. Playoff career, 2%. 2014 playoffs, 0%. He leads the playoffs currently in shots as well.
How about the Olympics?
I don't have that percentage.
Oh, come on. What kind of stat is that?
I don't know.
Acquired a statistician there,
all
John.
clutch
Acquired.
situations.
It'd probably be 0% too. Did he even
Gather the
score?
truth here.
Some
Even scoring
statistician you are. Come
He was
on.
really good at the Atlanta All-Star game. I remember that. All right. Let's go on tonight, Kevin. I am going to rebuke what I said a couple days ago about Minnesota because I really got a bunch of I don't even know if rebuke is the right word, but I got a bunch of people came at me for saying the Wild can do this three more times, that they can win this, that the New Jersey Devils used to make a living doing this, and Brizgalov is the goalie for the rest of the series. What do you see? What do you see tonight, Kev?
Well, I still think Chicago comes out and wins. I mean, it was an impressive performance in some respects, obviously, the last game. And, I mean, you think you have to look at this team now and say, all right, well, they figured something out. They figured out a little bit on how to deal with the Blackhawks. The problem is the Blackhawks have looked at that tape as well, as we've talked about, and they're going to know what the issue is. It's just too much firepower. Like, I think the Wild's offense is better than we think it is. It has more potential there. It's not the Lemaire team that we're dealing with. And, who knows? I mean, Brizgalov certainly has some potential to throw up some big numbers. He has done that in the past. So I think there's always hope. It is the NHL playoffs and not the NBA playoffs. So, I think there's a shot. But, the Blackhawks are so strong. Their transition game is so good. Their goaltending is so good. They've got Kane. They've got Taves. I can give you 10 to 15 reasons why I think Chicago will win the series. But, I respect the fans of Minnesota for thinking their team could be like the New Jersey Devils.
I like it. I know. And they do have some similarities to where you always thought the Devils, there was no way they were going to win certain series, and they did manage to. They could do it for 4 games, but they also had Marty Brodeur, not Ilya Brizgalov.
Yeah. The only thing similar between those two is that they both wore goalie pads.
Yeah, and they had Scott Stevens, too, as well.
And Scott Niedermayer.
Right.
Niedermayer, they had a whole lot there defensively. Even Brian Rafalski was an underrated defenseman.
Oh, definitely. The only thing they had in common really was Parise, kind of, at the end of the beginning of Parise's career. I guess the Devils were there. But Julie, give me one reason why Minnesota will win tonight.
I don't have one for you. I still think, given the way the games have played out, and I know that there's a Game 3 and a Game 4 tonight, which are kind of important to my theory, but I really think that this round is going to end on Sunday.
Yeah. Actually, these teams don't play tonight, do they?
No, they play tomorrow.
I'm such an idiot. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Well,
we're giving an extra sneak preview
we'll
there.
Just slice this part into tomorrow's podcast. I'll cut it out and go tomorrow.
Yeah, don't
We're
worry.
done talking about that. Because tonight we actually do have, I was just thinking to myself, darn it. Tonight we have the two that there's no reason, Julie, why the Wild would win tonight should be your answer because they don't play tonight.
Do you have Star Trek on your?
Excellent notice. Good job. You see, this was my little hat tip to Mike.
You really are a tech geek.
You know it.
All right.
All right. So moving on. Tonight we actually have the two most interesting series of the playoffs going on. They actually are being played. Josh, let's start with you here because we've been hearing from you for a little bit. We've got Montreal, got Boston. This is the game that Boston has to win, right? This is the game.
Absolutely. I think they're going to come out tonight, like I said yesterday, the day before. I can't remember because I lose track of time. I believe Boston will show up for this game, and they got to win. I mean, it's a big game, and I think they'll have a huge rebound after a not so great performance the previous game.
I want to see it. I want to see the long series here because this is just such a great series. But I think Montreal wins tonight. Kevin, your thoughts? Sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think someone's going to lay out PK Subban tonight. But anyway.
All right. Let's see that. Okay,
oh, I love it. I did that on Twitter the other day. Like, give me some random prediction, so that can be your random prediction, Josh.
Your random prediction. All right. Okay. Now
I'll tweet it to you.
All right.
It's
she's following you now.
That's right.
Anarchy Day today at Hockey Buzz, at the HockeybuzzCast. Kev, your thoughts on this one?
I think it's time for the Bruins to be the Bruins. We haven't seen them yet in this series the way that they've played down the stretch and in the first round against the Red Wings. I think it's time for them to step up, and I think they'll do that. I think enough's enough.
I'm with you, Mike.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I mean, I think it's do or die for Boston. If they go down 3-1, they might win back in Boston in Game 5. But Tuukka Rask has not won in the Bell Center in his entire career. That's that's sort of the mental block that he has to get past. Now, I'm not saying it's all on his shoulders because the top two lines for the Bruins really have not shown up in this series so far. Apparently, Claude Julien is going to shake up the lines. At least he's trying to show that in practice this morning. He's moved Lucic with Patrice Bergeron, so we might see a little bit of a new look. But I think what has to happen is they need Zdeno Chara to play 30 minutes and to impose his will. And I think, Julie, what you just said, or what somebody said about PK Subban being laid out, if Chara gets a chance to lay out PK Subban or somebody like Brendan Gallagher, that could be an emotional turning point to the series. So I would look for something like that to happen tonight, and I think the Bruins will win.
Be a good one. All right, Julie and I will discuss LA and Anaheim tonight. I think this is going to be a tough one. I think this is where Anaheim makes their mark. I do. I have a feeling that
they have to.
Yeah, they have to,
it's
right?
Imperative.
This is it, though. This is where they can do it. I could see them winning big tonight. I said that about them in Game 2, too, but at some point they're going to break through this, right, Jules?
I thought it would have happened by now because here's my problem with LA is, with the exception of Game 1, they have really just completely dominated the game. It's one thing to have a really strong goaltender who can, really erase all of your mistakes, but they're not even making that many mistakes. So they're just really being effective in shutting down the Ducks' offense, and that's what the Ducks are. They're an offensive team. They're a run and gun, shove it down your throat, and the Kings are just playing great team defense. And I will say this, because I've said it about the Rangers, is that having time off allows them the opportunity to practice and create game plans. If the Ducks do not respond in this game, it very easily the Kings could sweep. This is the game they have to respond. They have to show that they've made adjustments. If they don't come out on top, I find it very difficult to believe that they'll do it again on Saturday in Game 4.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll second all that. I think you're dead on. I think that's what we have to look for tonight. And this is Getzlaf's game, right? This is where we're going to see Ryan Getzlaf take control. And
this needs to be Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaf, Teemu Selanne. They just need to put their foot down and take over the game.
Oh,
but
right.
That said, it needs to be done collectively because the Kings will be able to shut down an effective line.
Yeah, and this
you need to be able to run it consistently. So this is the game. You make the changes during your what do they have, like 3 days off?
Yeah.
So you make the changes and you come back better for it in this Game 3.
this brings back a point, Kevin, and you and I had talked about before, which is Teemu Selanne actually has been one of the more effective Ducks in this series, I think. He's been making plays and moving really well. Here's a guy who was scratched. What are your thoughts on that whole thing?
Well, you got to wonder. I mean, could that have had an impact on such a veteran player? And the answer is probably yes. I mean, I think he was embarrassed by that, and his level of play has been high since then, and I'm kind of glad to see it. As I mentioned before, he's always been one of my favorite players, and I hate for him to go out on a bad note. So this is good. The Ducks. It's almost like we've forgotten they're a good team. Like I think the Kings, we've all been impressed by what they've done, and we knew no one wanted to play them in the postseason. We know what they're capable of doing. Right. But the Anaheim team is still pretty darn good, and despite the fact they're down in this series, they have the potential to just slap the Kings around. They did it during the regular season. Now the argument against that is the Kings are a different team now. Like Gaborik has changed the formation of that team. These Ducks are flying in not the V shape anymore. It's a different one. So, it's a little bit nutty, but I think the Ducks are going to win one here.
They got to win one, and the Flying V is a great reference to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks movie, which is absolutely one of our favorites here in this house. Mike,
just quickly, I think that the Ducks are going to try to put a little bit of physical pounding on Gaborik, and because he's been such a key player in the first two games, scoring the final two goals in Game 1, scoring the opening goal in Game 2, and taking into account his history of injury. Not to say they're going to go out and try to injure him, but I think they're going to go out and try to lay the body on him. Guys like Smith Pelly and Bonino and players of that nature. They're going to step up their physical game, and I'm sure they're going to probably zero in on Gaborik. And if they can do that, then I think they can negate a lot of his offensive abilities. But we'll see if they can do that.
Got to catch him first.
Right.
He flies. I mean, he's as fast as anybody in the NHL. All right, before we go, UFA to B today, we're going to talk about is Milan Michalek, which I can never say his name properly. Milan Michalek, who actually I've always been a Milan Michalek fan. He's only 29, which is weird. He feels like he's been in the league for a long time. He's only 29 years old. Mm-hmm. As a Shark, he showed moments that were really, I thought at times, pretty spectacular. He's got an ability to look like a superstar player at times, and he can disappear as well over large stretches of time, which is what ended up getting him traded out. If you remember, he was traded with I think Setaguchi, right, for Heatley.
No, he was part of the Danny Heatley deal.
Right, the Heatley deal. So yeah, I guess Setaguchi wasn't in that. They made
Jonathan Chichu.
Chichu, that's right. The Setaguchi one happened a couple really quickly after that, I believe, or somewhere in there. There was a lot of wild trades back then.
Yeah, they were tight.
Wild and Shark stuff. So I see that, but this is a guy who I honestly think could be the kind of like the diamond in the rough of this UFA period, because he just, if he goes to the right situation or the right team, he could really be something. But then you have to ask yourself, why have the Senators not tied this guy up? Look at all the craziness that's going on in Ottawa. They're possibly trading Jason Spezza at the draft. That's the big rumbling, right? Bobby Ryan's a UFA after this coming season. They've got Alex Hemsky's gone. He's another UFA. So, and this is a kid that they should be building around. So let's go around real quick. We'll go from left to right again. Josh, you tell me your thoughts on Milan.
Well, the thing with Milan is, and I think a lot of you guys know this, is the fact that he has had an issue with staying healthy over the years.
Mm-hmm.
If he was an 82-game player, if he was a guy that could play at least 80 games a season, I think there'd be a tremendous amount of interest in him at the UFA period July 1st. I mean, obviously there'll be teams that are still interested in him because when he does play, he's pretty productive. I could see Michalek... I mean, could we see him in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform maybe? You got to think it's going to be one of those top teams that are going to go after him. Maybe, I shouldn't say top teams, but New York Rangers maybe. I don't know. It's a good question. I think Ottawa should re-sign him because they are getting rid of they're going to lose a lot of their big players, especially if the Spezza thing happens at the draft.
He's a left wing too, which is another key part of him. Julie.
I don't have anything to contribute.
Fantastic. Kevin.
I don't.
I think he's going to get overpaid because there's the free agent list isn't as strong as it should be for the number of teams who are looking for goals, and he's going to be sitting out there, and the romance of him is probably greater than the reality because of his history. But I see him more going with the team on its way up. I think somebody will overpay. Maybe it's a Phoenix or a New York Islanders team. Phoenix makes sense obviously because of the brother connection. But I can't see him being a Penguin. They've had so many injury problems this season. I don't think they want to take that on.
He seems like a stereotypical Penguin of the late '90s. Not just because
I wouldn't disagree with that.
He's like, where are we going? Yuri Hrdina.
Guys, I was actually wrong about Mahalik. He had 82 games this year. For the first time in his career, he played 82 games, but he only had 39 points.
Right. Yeah, he kind of got shoved down to the second line, though, often with Bobby Ryan there, too. Mike?
Yeah, Josh actually stole one of my talking points because one of the things that was a contributing factor to him playing 82 games is that he basically stayed on the outside, on the periphery. He wasn't a guy who was going to the front of the net. He's more of a peripheral player. Yes, he scored 20 goals, I think 3 times with San Jose. He scored 35 goals once with Ottawa. But he's got chronic knee problems. He had an ACL injury. During the lockouts shortened season, he was out twice with knee injuries. To me, he strikes me as one of these guys that is brought in by a team, like say Washington brought in with Mikhail Grabovski, a 1-year, $3 million deal. I think he'll get money. I don't think he'll get term because of the injury problems and because of the inconsistency. But I agree with Kevin. I think a team like Phoenix, where his brother is playing, who could use offense, would be a perfect fit. They're probably going to lose Radim Verbata to free agency. There's a guy who's going to probably get overpaid by somebody with a long-term deal and high numbers. I think Phoenix probably could get him on a short-term deal for a pretty decent coin for 1 year, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he has played 82 games. So you can see his agent's argument. He's going to say, listen, he scored 35 goals once, and now he's healthy. He played an entire year, right? You can see this. You can see where this is going and what he'll do. I think he's going to get actually a longer contract, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got a 5-year deal from somebody. $5 million per 5. I actually could see something along those lines, which is overpaying. But I'll tell you what, I'll never forget San Jose Detroit series. The series, the Sharks were up, I think. Surprise! The Sharks were up in a series and lost the series to Detroit. But this was way back when, and it's amazing how things haven't changed in like a decade. But when he was there, and I remember him playing in one of the games I saw, probably the turning point of that series was an overtime game. And there was one particular play where Mikhailiuk was just in the slot, got the puck sort of in a group of 4 guys that were around him, and then rifled a shot off the crossbar that was just as skilled a play and as hard and quick of a release of a shot as I'd ever seen in my life. Like this, that it was just. And I was sitting next to Ryan Garner, who's Hockey Buzz's San Jose writer at the time, in San Jose, and I said, was that really Mikhailiuk? And he's like, yeah, he can do that. That's something he can do. He's got the ability to do that, and that's why he will be tempting. He sort of reminds me a little bit of like a Victor Stahlberg to a degree, but who's got that ability. But he's been more consistent than Stahlberg. So I don't know. This will be good. But well, that's it for today, guys. But thank you so much. And Kevin, what do you have coming on USA today?
Well, I've been working on the draft piece that I was talking about with Dale Talent, finding out. I'm pretty confident that somebody's going to move on that top 5. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but somebody is. So I've been trying to figure out who that's going to be, and what are the chances that there'll be a different team picking at number 1. I think it's 50-50.
Interesting. Julie, we've got some also. The World start tomorrow.
Yeah, just an FYI. For the first game, Team USA's first game is, I believe, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on NBC SN. Should you want to watch?
I'm glad to see that NBC SN's covering this now. All right, guys. Well, take care. We'll talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks again. Subscribe to the Hockey Buzzcast. Tell your friends. And pass around the link because we really appreciate it. We hope you like what we're doing. We're gonna keep adjusting, keep making it better, and and go from there. If you guys like what we're doing, please tell us. If you don't like, please tell us. Let us know what you're thinking, and we will make our adjustments because we really want to do this show as a way to kind of help you get through the middle of the day and a way to keep you up on your news. And we like to have some fun with it, obviously, but because it is only hockey. And without the buzz,
It's just hockey.
I missed your cue. I'm sorry. There's Julie's smile. Imagine her saying it's just hockey. I was like, oh man, I was so into my little like soliloquy there that I completely forgot to shift to you. But it is just hockey, Julie. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.